Hello, welcome to the Security Breakdown, a monthly-ish podcast about security and other stuff.
Yeah, hi. Monthly-ish.
Yeah, monthly-ish.
When we can-ish, we get this done. Yeah.
And we're sponsored by
the Skills for Security, who are the leading provider of apprenticeships for the security industry in the United Kingdom.
So thank you very much, Skills for Security. My name's Jack. This is Matt. We are from Smokescreen, and this week, month, year, day, we are going to be talking about your new bugbear, your new initiative.
That's not really new.
Well, it's new. Nothing's happened yet.
Right. Well, no, things have happened.
Nothing tangible.
Tangible things have happened. Do you want to tell everybody what you're talking about?
I can't remember what it's called.
So we are trying to examine ways in which the support of victims of retail crime can be enhanced after the event. So if there's a recognition that bad things can happen, it's how is effective support delivered? And the reasons for that are multitude, not least of which is I think backed up by statistics, there's a real recruitment issue in the retail industry because of the kind of things that can happen. So it's not just recruitment. So there is a bit of that. People may not want to enter the industry anyway because of the bad things that they see happening.
Yeah.
But also it's how do you retain staff? Because there's a cost to industry to recruit staff. Not that cost is everything, but it's part of the factor of thinking. And then once you've spent the money to recruit people, you want them to stay within your organisation.
Yeah, you don't want to be churning over staff because
it's bad news.
They don't want to be there.
Exactly.
You want to make it a hospitable environment to work in.
Yeah, but aside from that, there's the human part as well, which is nobody wants to feel like they are either working within or running an organisation where people are not safe and bad things are happening to them. So
being the person who feels not safe.
Right.
Right.
All of that.
That's probably the most important.
Even trying
part,
to explain it shows just how big and complex an issue it is.
I think for me, the perspective coming from the actual retail workers should be the most important part.
Yeah.
Like these are the people that are
on the front line.
Which I was just about to say, and I realised how militaristic that language already is.
At the coalface.
Like you are, well, that's not as bad.
No.
But on the front lines.
At the sharp end of the stick.
Yeah. They're all, none of them are nice.
No, they're not, no.
Right? So immediately there's a perception that the retail industry, being a person who works in retail, is inhospitable, uncomfortable, and therefore not a desirable place to work. So immediately you've got a problem where people don't want to work there in the first place. It's hard to recruit into retail because it's not a fun job, right? Yeah. I know people who do work in retail and they love it, but I also know a lot of people who do or have worked in retail and it was
I think in our industry,
it's the worst.
I think in our industry, and if you're a security provider or manufacturer or whatever, if you're working in the security industry, we have a uniquely poor perspective of what goes on out in the world because we only get asked to go to bad things.
Yes, we only go to the places where crimes are about to or have already happened.
Typically have already happened, So we kind of get a bit of a negative viewpoint of it. And also, all of us within our industry, I imagine there's plenty of people that are the same. Our social media feeds are filled by the algorithm with, look at this bad thing occurring and whatever. So probably, I think it was nearly a year ago now, under conversations with various retailers about what they do, how do they support people post-crime and various conversations with other people within our industry, we sort of came to a conclusion that actually there's a lot of focus, rightly so, put on offender rehabilitation. And I'm a huge believer in offender rehabilitation because if people are taken out of situations where they are likely to commit a crime, then that's a win for everybody, right? Because you've won for the person who would have reoffended. You've won for society generally because the offence is now not going to occur in theory.
That's right. We're not paying our taxes to
incarcerate people
put
or
them
whatever
in
else.
prison
Yeah.
and pay for whatever
And
damage they cause.
you hear really powerful things from ex-offenders who have been rehabilitated about what their life was like pre-rehabilitation, where particularly where there's substance abuse involved, they would get arrested on purpose to take a break.
Because it's nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They weren't having to think about going to fund the habit, which they physically and mentally, it's an illness in my view.
Absolutely.
They had to do those things. Your hobby
Don't
was,
even get me started.
yeah, about the horrendous crisis around fentanyl in the United States, and that is being, ending up here as well in the UK.
That's right. But
so just to complete on that point,
you're right.
There's a lot of talk about that and a lot of focus on it, rightly so. But from what we could see, no national conversation about support of victims. So a national conversation around offender rehabilitation.
the perpetrators are getting all the
Airtime.
all the cushy bits.
Well, yeah. I mean, you
victims are being
could
left by the
argue
wayside.
that. You could argue that, absolutely. So we started talking to people, and there was what was really great was meeting organisations. I'm going to name check Michelle Douglas at River Island and various other people that we've talked with. But Michelle in particular, because I've had a few conversations with her about how they've evolved their policies within River Island to recognise enhanced issues within the retail environment generally. And then how do you look after people should things bad occur?
Yeah.
So that they're quite proactive about that. It was really quite inspiring. So from there you go, well, if organisations like River Island are doing that, there will be others who are proactive in that. And it's how do we capture the best practice from them?
It seems like River Island's kind of maybe would you say a gold standard of what they're doing?
Certainly, if not already gold standard, going in that direction.
They're keeping it to themselves.
No, I wouldn't say that they're absolutely open to people and to sharing, and they proactively tell people, please, we want to share our practice with you.
Okay.
In fact, Michelle was on a panel discussion with me last week where that message was promoted, but it's about getting that message out there. And not only that, I think there's a gap for capturing best practice from around various parts of industry and other organisations that are not necessarily in retail, and trying to formulate a best practice code of practice.
Yeah, a toolkit.
A toolkit, exactly.
That retailers and other can use to support their
Which is created by the retailers, importantly.
Yeah, because they're the ones that are at the coal face.
The sharp end of the stick. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, so if that's, we can see why it's important, right? We know that retail staff are getting hammered left, right, and centre, and people are dropping like flies, and many other idioms.
I was going to say, how many metaphors can you squeeze into one sentence?
What is it that River Island are doing to, help their victims, their staff that are victims?
I think there's nothing revolutionary. What there is a proactive effort to address changing nature of risk and recognising that policies that were fit for purpose, maybe whenever they were written, whether that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago, whatever it was, they're living, breathing policies that must be enhanced as the threat landscape changes, basically. And there was a ton of learnings from Michelle about it's fine having policies put in place, but what's really critical is having buy-in from the very top of the organisation, which there's a feeling doesn't always occur because the very top of the organisation may be kind of insulated by work that's done by loss prevention departments. So they may not understand the true scale of what's been done and what's been achieved. And that can lead to situations like when there's budgetary cuts, for instance, and those things happen, cost to business is not going down, it's definitely going up. The rise in national insurance, the rise in energy bills, all of that contributes. And if the very top are not kind of internally marketed to and fully understand why work is important, they may look at budgets as numbers on a spreadsheet and go, well, cuts can be made there, and it can be kind of arbitrary.
Yeah,
So,
if they're not seeing directly being sold the benefit
yeah,
of what they're already paying for, they're not going to carry on paying for it, are they?
that's right. Yeah. So I think when we were talking about this earlier, you were like, well, yeah, but Matt, why is this important? Why do we need to do that? When the answers, I think, kind of present themselves. The retail industry to the whole of the United Kingdom, or whatever marketplace the retail industry we're talking about is vital to the correct functioning of life in general, basically.
Yeah. Modern society is powered by retail, right?
100%.
You've got to go shopping. You got to buy clothes, you got to buy food, you got to buy your phone, and you got to buy cars and toys and everything. Everything that you buy is retail.
You can imagine a situation where if the problems were big enough, there's just like this dystopian kind of landscape, barren wasteland of just coffee shops and office blocks for rent and shut buildings.
And everything that you buy comes in a dark blue van.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not particularly what the future I'd like to see. So,
I'm sure there's people that would argue that that's not a
happening.
dystopian future. That's a utopian future where you don't have to go out into the shops. You get whatever you want just comes to you. Or even better, it's like Star Trek, and you get whatever you want just comes out of a machine.
Yeah, I'm sure there are those people. Right? I'm sure there are. But there are also an equal amount of people, if not more, that would like to be able to go out of the house and go to nice places.
Yeah, I think we won't understand the impact of losing that
until it's gone.
Yeah. Humans are social creatures, right? Mm-hmm. We thrive off of interacting with other people. As much as people will say, "Oh, I can't bear people. I don't want to be around people."
That's you. That is
right.
You're like that.
Sometimes, but if it's completely taken away, that social interaction that forms part of our human psyche will be lost, and it will not be easy to recover.
It won't recover.
And not being able to go to the shops might be the only thing that some people have left.
Right. That's a really good point. That is a really good point. So Iceland, the greengrocer...
yes.
Richard Walker, they recognise that actually for their customers, they're a key lifeline, because a lot of the customers that go there may be the older generation. Maybe they've lost a partner, maybe they're on their own, and their only social interaction is going to the shop to buy something. Yeah. And frequently it's their cashiers that notice, oh, Fred, for the sake of argument, hasn't been in for his milk this week. What, is he okay? And they may be the ones that raise the alarm. So there's important functions fulfilled by the retail environment. But not only that, I would argue that today there's nobody that can turn around and go, I don't know anyone that works in retail. You know, it may be your children, it may be a relative, it may be your next door neighbour, it might be a mother-in-law, it might be whatever. Within your network, you'll definitely have people working within, because it's such a big employer.
Yeah.
So it means that when people are victimised by crime, there's a very high chance it's someone you know. It's someone within the area you live. And, you know, we've talked about in the past how there's a lot of people who work within retail who live within a mile of their place of work, not within their place of work, when you think about convenience stores and things like that. So if they're being attacked, they're basically being attacked where they live. And getting over that trauma is not insignificant. Everyone wants to feel safe where they live, don't they? I would think. There's nobody that goes out
find somebody that doesn't.
Want to be in the... I suppose there might be some, you know, crazy...
They want to be in the danger.
People that thrive on the danger.
Yeah,
but nobody...
but they probably thrive on danger that isn't some guy in a balaclava coming in with a machete.
Yeah.
Right? It's probably bears.
Maybe. You always tend to surprise me with the tangents you go off at. I would never have just picked bears out.
I took a lot of logical leaps to get to bears.
Yeah.
It was like, if people want to live in the danger, they probably want to live somewhere dangerous. Where's somewhere dangerous? Alaska. What does Alaska have? Bears. It perfectly makes sense.
Oh, God. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
It seemed like you were struggling.
No, yeah, okay. I don't think there's many people that would blame me, but moving on. The original point you made was we've only just started thinking about this, and my point was actually we started talking about this more or less a year ago, and there was a panel discussion 6 months ago where I was sat with who was on that panel. We had Iona, and this is quite powerful, we had Jitson Ladd and one of his colleagues from the Central Co-op, and they got one of their in-store colleagues on stage to recount their experience. And this, I think, really is worth recounting because it shows a bit more. We're snowed under with videos in social media showing people jumping over counters, being aggressive towards staff. You almost become a bit desensitized to it, maybe.
Yeah, it's just another violent
another one. Yeah,
assault.
Hearing this girl recount what happened to her was a real wake-up call and a reminder that we should not become desensitized. This should not become normalised. That people, number one, there's got to be a drive to get rid of this behaviour.
Yep.
But number two, the impact on the people that these crimes are perpetrated against is significant and real. So this particular lady, she worked on the checkout, and the attack that took place was somebody brought petrol into the store, poured it on her, produced a book of matches and said, if you do not give me what's in the till, I will set you on fire. Now, I can't imagine how terrifying that would be to me. I think this poor woman probably hadn't recovered from the shock of it because she was very matter of fact when she recounted it. And this is a mother of 2 young children. You know, they had something taken a step further. You know, there's no question it would have been life-changing and dramatically so.
Yeah, for a huge number of people.
Yes.
Yeah, the shockwave of that act isn't isolated.
So that's the nature of the threat. And that is a really, really, really serious crime. You know, there is a very real threat of physical harm to somebody.
Yeah.
And the point that you sort of reach when you're listening to that is people like that require support. You know, there's going to be a period of time to recover from that, return to the workplace if they want to return to the workplace. I mean, she did. She was super brave.
I guess if the what we were talking about at the start is staff retention, right?
Yeah.
And if the tools are in place where we can help the victims and coach them into recovery, then the whole, well, not the whole, but part of the point of that is to then retain them back into the workplace.
Yes.
Because you don't want to end up with people who are getting attacked in retail and then leaving the retail workplace and potentially not working at all, because that, again, is a compound issue.
So I think this is the point, isn't it? That none of this can be allowed to be normalised. There's got to be a drive to reduce it.
Yeah.
But there's got to also be a recognition that things can go wrong. Even if we did, as an industry, as a country, as whatever, we did the best job in the world, and there will still be the outlying incidents. And there still needs to be that point in the chain where it recognises that bad things can happen. And in the event that bad things happen, here's what best practice is to support people. So the whole idea became, can a kite mark, a voluntary code of practice, which I mentioned already, be created that gives an outward display to people who may be considering employment? Actually, they've got that covered.
Yeah, they feel safe knowing that they can work there, and that if something terrible were to happen, that they would have a support network behind them that can look after them.
Yep.
And they're not going to be left
and they
alone.
know, they know what to do. I mean, one incident, this is not, I just want to really illustrate how impactful these events can be. It's not directly retail, but it occurred in a retail environment. It was in a high street bank, which is absolutely a retail. I think financial institutions often get separated out of retail, but it's a retail bank and it's a high street store. It's a retail environment. Yeah. And the particular industry in question often gets taken out of the sort of retail thinking. It's cash in transit. And I think because, there's special dispensations for armoured vehicles and they've got body armour and they've got systems
think they're
in
safe.
place. You think they're safe, right. So the particular cash-in-transit courier in question had seen an increase in attacks on their teams, 25% in a specific time, which was at the time that ATMs were being replenished. And the reasons for that were stealing a box as it crossed the pavement. So, they carry the box over the pavement, and this is when you replenish an ATMs, it may have an ATM cassette in there. Stealing that had become less and less cost efficient, because within there's £25,000 more or less. But the boxes are very well defended. They're tracked. They've got cash degradation systems. So the payoff for committing what is a very serious crime is pretty low if you successfully get away with the cash, right?
Yeah, the best you get in 25 grand, and there's a high chance that you won't get that, and there's a high chance that you'll get
a significant custodial sentence attached to what is armed robbery. Yeah. So the attacks had gone to the ATM replenishment time when all the cash had crossed the pavement, and the cash was at its most vulnerable because it was all decanted into one place out of the vehicle into the high street bank. And the 25% increase in this type of attack, and they are rapid and they are violent. And the sort of MO of the perpetrators is they want to establish control quickly. So they'll typically do that with violence.
Yep.
And once they've established control, they want to maintain control, get what they came for, and go. And it changes the cost effectiveness of carrying out the crime. Anyway, the one video that will stick in my mind for life was a guard being brutalised. He was hit over 40 times with a sledgehammer, and it shattered his shoulder blade, destroyed his rib cage, punctured a lung. He thought he was going to die. He was doing what he was told. He was compliant.
Yeah.
He didn't really have a lot of choice. The attack was so quick and so brutal that what are you meant to do? The physical recovery was 6 months from that. The mental recovery, who knows? Who knows what he's going to...
Who knows what knock-on effect that would have had, even if he himself thought that he was back to normal.
Yeah. Now, I would imagine that the cash-in-transit couriers will have very robust procedures in place because they're at the highest level of risk, basically.
They know the risk in the first place, right? It's not like retail.
They will be set up to support recovery. There's no question. The idea around this is that we can capture, as an industry, as a community, all of the best practice and centralise it. That's the idea. And I think that was borne out in the panel discussion last week where we had Iona Blake from BP. I didn't mean to make it like BP. I've got a bit of a cold. It's making me a bit squeaky.
Yeah.
Stuart Codling, from Chief Inspector from Thames Valley Police. Saskia, from the Head of Policy from the Susie Lamplugh Trust, and Michelle Douglas, who I mentioned earlier, from River Island. And it's been a little bit of a journey of discovery because we are a security equipment manufacturer, so we're not directly linked in with these things. I'm just very interested in it. So talking to, for instance, the Susie Lamplugh Trust, there is already resources out there toolkits that can be brought into retail to use, which obviously the Susie Lamplugh Trust is very, very happy to share. As a reminder about what the Susie Lamplugh Trust is, it was nearly 30 years ago, I think. Susie Lamplugh was a woman that disappeared and nobody knows what happened to her. It's probably correctly assumed that she was murdered and she was alone. She was an estate agent in a lone worker situation, and she disappeared from a house viewing. Young girl, 25 or 26, and that's it. So the family they've lost her. She's gone. So the Susie Lamplugh Trust has got great resources around lone worker protection, but also some of those recovery things that we're talking about. So there's already stuff out there, but I really think there's an opportunity to get everybody together and capture all the best stuff and share. One thing that doing all the fight back things has highlighted is just how much of a community there is, not only around retail, but around loss prevention, around business improvement, around policing. people want to do the best they can. So that's
Yeah,
where,
I think you end up in a place like that, especially with the bids, where they really care about their area, and that's why they're in the bid in the first place, and that's why the bid exists in the first place, right? It's a voluntary thing that starts. It gets paid for by the levy from the shops. The people are only involved because they want it to happen.
Yeah.
So you're right. And then the same with the police. People aren't policemen and police women, police officers.
Because they don't want to
Because
help.
they don't want to solve crime, right?
You absolutely imagine that people enter the police force because they want to make changes for the better.
Yeah, because they've got that personality trait that makes them want to do the right thing and make people's lives better.
Yeah.
So, and you're right about the fight back. You see these conversations happen where the staff of the shops are talking to the police and they're like, oh, wait, you do actually care. And there should be that exact same response when there's retail staff that have already suffered an attack, where they go, oh, wait, you actually want to help me and you want me to feel better.
Yeah.
I'm not just a number. That seems to me like a gold standard.
So I think whenever we engage, and we engage frequently with organisations that are trying to improve things, number one, we applaud the initiative to improve. But I do believe there's just a missed opportunity around a recognition that bad things, no matter what we do, bad things will still happen.
Yeah.
And it's got, we've got to...
Let's do something about that.
Exactly.
When it happens, let's do something about the result.
So all the other things have got to be done anyway. So there's various initiatives that are building pillars that will be like, okay, so what can you do around training to prevent things happening? What can you do around technology? What can you do around policing to prevent things happening? All about the prevention bit. But then there's the bit that goes, well, also...
What happens if all of that fails?
So then you've got an offender. So what do we do about offenders? All of that's also well recognised.
Yeah.
But what about the victim?
Yeah.
And that's the bit that I think that we could all get together. And I don't really care whether you're a vendor or a retailer or a police person or a bid or a charity or whatever. There's so much out there that just... I think there's that opportunity to get it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, you think there's an opportunity. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, we talked about this before. It's like you can't talk about this and not have a point. And it's been on my mind a little bit because we did the panel discussion at Retail Risk last week. It was a really good conversation and great points made. But then it's exactly what you've just done. It's so what? Now what? And I would like to try and keep the momentum going around that conversation. So we talked about it, and we think one thing that can be done is we host a webinar, and that people that will promote it and try and capture all that good energy into that webinar, try and come up with an agenda that can look at this and start capturing it. The date we've nominally selected is May the 27th. So we're going to promote that, look for sign-ups. If we get the right kind of interest, we'll run it, capture the interest, and then the intention will be to take those things and fire it back into all the other initiatives that we know are running, where they're building pillars, but we think there's that part missing. So that's the output we're looking to try and achieve.
Yes. So what I will do with this episode is I'll put a link to a form that you can fill in to say that you'd like to attend the webinar. It'll just be your name and your email address, something like that, just so that you're on the list, and then we'll send out a bit more information when the time comes. But it'll be the 27th of May. What time, we haven't decided yet. We'll see. And then we'll go from there and see what happens next, right? Because
we need to drive to action.
We need to have a conversation.
Talking's great. But we need to drive to action.
That's right.
And so what we'd be looking to do is start really capturing stuff, get all the best ideas, and then take the conversation to the next level where we can implement an action change.
Yeah. So if you've got ideas, or if you've got experience, or if you've got suggestions, that's what we want to hear. We want to talk to people and get people talking about what their views are, so that this, whatever it ends up being, this kite marked tool, this response system,
gold standard from crisis to care,
it has everything that everybody could possibly need in it to be as good as it possibly can be.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to miss out a vital section because we didn't think of it. right? So yeah, that pretty much sums that episode up, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks again to Skills for Security for sponsoring the podcast.
Thanks again to my panelists and the audience last week.
Thanks to Matt for saying all those words. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
See you later.